Welcome back to AM Northwest. Our first guest debut memoir has been getting rave reviews. It details her struggle to break free from her strict religious upbringing and find her own way. Here to share more, we welcome award-winning poet and author of How to Say Babylon, Safiya Sinclair. Good to have you with us, Safiya.
Hi.
This is really powerful, and you are getting rave reviews. How are you feeling about all the success now in paperback?
Yeah, I feel really grateful, feel lucky. You know, when you're sitting down writing the book, you never kind of imagine what's going to happen after.
Right.
So this is all just a wonderful bonus.
A lot of people don't know about Rastafarians, and we think of Bob Marley, but there's more to it than that, a lot more to it.
Yes.
And tell us about what Babylon is, because it stands for something.
Yes. You know, like you say, a lot of people, when they think of Rastafari, they just think of Bob Marley, they think of reggae. And most people would be surprised to know that Rastafari are historically a persecuted minority in Jamaica, that, you know, they're less than 1% of the population. And to them, they've faced a lot of strife and struggle and sort of being outcast from their families and turned away from jobs and forbidden from walking along the beach sides. And this kind of made them become a reclusive community, and they saw everything that fought against them as Babylon. So to them, to the Rastafari, Babylon is anything tied to Western ideology, anything tied to colonialism, imperialism, slavery, anything they see as oppressive to the Black community is called Babylon.
Absolutely. And you lived in a little community called White House, in between like huge hotels that cater to the tourists, that kind of thing. Tell me about your father and why he chose to be a part of Rastafari.
Well, you know, it's interesting because when I was writing the book, I had to really go back to his roots and ask him why he chose Rastafari. And, you know, my father is like a militant Rasta man. So his first answer was, I didn't choose Rasta. I was born Rasta.
Yeah, I gotcha.
You know, but for him, I think at the time, Jamaica had just gained their independence from Britain. We were trying to figure out as a nation where we were going to go next. What did freedom look like? What did, you know, Black community and unity look like? And for a lot of the youth in Jamaica, Rastafari provided the answer that they were looking for in this time of really choosing what your future was going to be.
It's type of a religious sect, and they don't drink, don't smoke. But also there's a lot of burden put on the women.
Yes.
Tell me about that and how it impacted you and what he expected from you and from your sisters.
Yeah, you know, there are 3 different sects, and, you know, Rastafari wouldn't say it's a religion, they would say it's a movement, or they use a word called livity. And it is very ascetic, I would say, you know, very concerned with the body being pure, the body being jazz temple. And so there were a lot of rules when I was growing up on what we could eat. You know, Rastafari eat a very strict vegan diet, which they call ital. There were rules on what we could wear, particularly the girls and women, as you say. You know, we could only wear long skirts and long dresses. Arms and knees had to be covered. Some Rasta women had to cover their hair. There were some sects of Rastafari where the women weren't allowed to be in the kitchen if they were on their menses. There was this idea that, you know, being on your menses made you impure. And so that
purity is a big part of it.
Purity was a big part of it. And I, you know, since I was a young girl, I grew up kind of hearing this idea of purity. Make sure you're pure, make sure you're not an unclean woman. And so I kind of was obsessed with wanting to be that for my father for a very long time, wanting to follow all the rules. And then I really started to question the rules by the time I turned like 10 or 11, because I began to see how different they were from my brother than they were for me. The boys weren't really, there were no rules on really what they could wear, or, you know, if they could have friends or if they could go out. And, you know, so, but for me, I'd always been told, me and my sisters, that the woman's highest virtue was her silence, her obedience, and her pliance. And, you know, almost immediately, I began to question some of those things.
Your mother really was like your biggest supporter, introduced you to books, and that's really what saved your life, isn't it?
Literally.
Yeah.
You know, I often say literally she saved my life. My mother changed the course of my life by introducing me to literature and to poetry. And it's something she always had a love of as well. You know, she would find books wherever she could,
Right.
and she gave the love of that to me and my siblings and
Yeah.
really expanded our world.
Your father put a lot of pressure on you as being the oldest, especially the
Yeah.
girl. He also was very strict when it came to discipline. There was a belt involved. You
Yes.
talk about the beatings, which are pretty brutal. And then in the end, he pulls up his machete.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Okay.
You know, it was good to be able to write through some of those things. I think it was a cathartic experience.
Had to be painful.
Of course, very
Yes.
I mean, you know,
Some of
there
these
were
things were-
moments where I was like weeping as I was writing,
Right.
but you know, it was important to me that I wanted to write the book because it didn't end there. That
Right.
wasn't the culmination of my life or my story.
Yeah.
You know, that there were traumatic things that happened to me, but that is not the measure of my family or of me or who I am. And it was really through poetry and through finding my voice that I was able to return to Jamaica, read my poem from my father, and really say, you know, I want you to see me, I want you to hear me. And
What did he think of the book? Did he read it?
You know, I think he's read it, but he hasn't told me
Yeah.
what he
Your mom
thinks.
read it,
Yes.
right? She loved it.
You know, she
That's not how she remembers things. Is that how that usually goes? Like, you know,
No,
But she remem-
she says this is exactly how I remember it, and my siblings too. But I consulted them when I was writing because I didn't want it to just be these are my memories only.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that when they entered the book, they would find themselves there
Yeah.
as they remembered it too. So I would call them all the time and say, do you remember when did we live at this place? Or how
Right.
do you remember this thing? Because I wanted it to be a collective weaving of our stories. And that the measure of our lives is not the painful things we went through, but the hope that kept us going and the beauty that, you know, ultimately I hope is alchemized through all of the wounds
right.
in the book.
And do you still love the sea?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
Helen. I dream of the sea. You know, for me, it's in the background of everything I do and think and hope for
Yeah.
is the sea.
Yeah. This is absolutely beautiful. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing. Again, the book is titled How to Save Babylon. Safiya Sinclair, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. We'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.